My fiancé left me to die in the rain, so I married his billionaire enemy, a cat in a coma.
A stale tuna water and cheap cologne used to be the soundtrack to my ruin. In my first life, I drove through a flash flood to drag my drunk fiancé out of a gutter, only to die a miserable, broken woman a decade later. But when my eyes snapped open to my phone's abrasive blare, I didn't reach for my keys. I stared at stained popcorn stucco, swallowed a phantom taste of my own blood, and hung up. Tonight, I wasn't saving him. Tonight, I was marrying a dead Tom walking. The mattress springs dug into my lower back, sharp and familiar. I didn't open my eyes right away. I was waiting for the pain, the crushing weight of the steering wheel, the shatter of glass raining on my whiskers, that coppery taste of blood in the back of my throat. But there was only a low hum, the fridge kicking on. I blinked. The ceiling wasn't the crumpled roof of a sedan. It was popcorn stucco with a big yellow water stain shaped like a bruised fish. I took a breath. It was deep, unobstructed, and smelled faintly of dust, cheap vanilla wax, and old laundry detergent. My tail flicked on its own. Whole. I was whole. Next to me, my phone buzzed angrily on the cheap particle board nightstand, lighting up my tiny bedroom in harsh blue. Liam. The name hit like a claw to the chest. My first stood up. The clock next to it blinked. 11:42 p.m. October 14th, 10 years ago. The night my life pivoted from merely disappointing to inescapable hell. In my past life, I answered that call. Liam was drunk at the Rusty Anchor, that dive bar downtown that always smelled like old sardines. He lost his keys, spent our rent money on tunatinis for girls who wouldn't look at him twice, and needed a ride. I threw on a ratty hoodie, grabbed my keys, and drove out into the worst storm the city had seen in a century. I hydroplaned. The car flipped. I survived, but my spine didn't. I spent the next decade in a wheelchair, bound to a Tom who resented me for being a burden, dying alone in an underfunded ward. The phone buzzed again, teetering on the edge. I reached out. My paw was shaking, not from fear, but from pure energy. Slender, unscarred. No swollen knuckles from years of gripping wheelchair rims. My claws were perfect, pink and sharp. I pressed green. Chloe, come on, babe. Don't be like that. Liam slurred through the speaker, jukebox thumping and cheap glasses clinking behind him. Need a ride. I'm at the Anchor. Lost my wallet. Need you to pay the tab, too. Bring cash. CLO, you listening? Don't make me wait. It's raining. The sheer, staggering entitlement hit me like cold water. 10 years of guilt evaporated in 1 second. I didn't feel hot anger. I felt cold, clinical disgust. Call a cab, Liam, I said. My voice was steady, flat. Not the weak croak of a dying Molly. I ain't got my wallet, he barked, that nasty temper I used to tiptoe around. Get your ass down here now. I pressed red. I dropped the phone and swung my legs over the bed. My bare paws hit the cheap laminate floor. Freezing. Amazing. I curled my toes, feeling the grit. My tail swished high. I walked to the window. Outside, rain poured in thick sheets, turning the neon signs on my street, hot pink, lime, electric blue, into blurry bleeding halos. If I stayed, Liam would stumble home, soaking, screaming, breaking things. The cycle would continue. I needed to leave, not just the apartment, but the entire trajectory of my existence. I pulled open my dresser and threw clothes into a duffel bag. Jeans, tees, my one Goodwill sweater that made my cream-colored fur look extra soft. Where was I going? I had $50 in a jar and a checking account overdrawn by $12 because Liam bought a new headset. Then a memory surfaced. Not from before the crash, but from the hospital. In my previous life, I spent 6 months in the orthopedic trauma wing of St. Jude's. The nurses gossiped constantly. And the biggest story that decade happened exactly on October 14th in the VIP intensive care unit, 3 floors above me. Amos Hayes, heir to the Hayes shipping empire. A billionaire. A sleek, charcoal gray tomcat worth $4 billion. In a coma for 3 months after a suspicious boating accident. Tonight, October 14th, at exactly 2 a.m., the board was set to vote to strip his family of shares, citing his incapacitation and lack of a legal heir or spouse to act as his proxy. His grandmother, Beatrix Hayes, a tiny, terrifying Persian with pearls that cost more than my apartment building and claws that could end careers before breakfast, was desperate. According to Nurse Brenda, Beatrix tried to pay a socialite millions to sign a marriage certificate that very night. The socialite took the money, sold out to the rival faction 6 months later, and Amos's life support was quietly pulled. He died without ever opening his amber eyes. I looked at the clock. 12:15 a.m. I grabbed my heavy yellow raincoat, vinyl, bright as a sunflower, squeaky, shoved my paws into worn combat boots, and grabbed the $50. I wasn't a socialite. I was a nobody street cat with a second chance. And Beatrix Hayes was a desperate woman with a checkbook. I locked the deadbolt and walked into the rain. The bus ride to St. Jude's took 20 minutes. I sat in the back, shivering, water dripping from my yellow coat and pooling on the rubber floor. The city blurred past in watercolor lights. Teal, fuchsia, mango orange. My whiskers twitched. I didn't need to understand the physics of time travel. I just needed to survive it. The hospital doors slid open with a hiss. Bright fluorescence, smell of rubbing alcohol and floor wax. I didn't stop at the front desk. I knew this place better than my own apartment. I bypassed the main elevators and took the stairwell near the cafeteria. 7 flights. By the 4th, my thighs were burning. By the 6th, I was panting, my breath echoing. But I felt my legs. I hadn't felt them in 10 years. The pain was exquisite. My tail puffed with effort. I pushed through the fire door on the 7th floor, the VIP wing. Thick sound-dampening carpet, warm recess bulbs, walls painted soothing sage green, covered in expensive catnip paintings. Down the hall outside room 701 were 3 cats. A balding Tom in a sharp charcoal suit pacing, a younger associate clutching a briefcase like a shield, and Beatrix Hayes. She was smaller than I imagined, a snow-white Persian, frail, wrapped in a heavy cashmere shawl despite the heat. But her spine was a steel rod. Leaning on a silver-tipped cane, watching the pacing lawyer with eyes that could freeze boiling tuna water. "It is unacceptable, Finch," her voice carried, sharp and brittle. "You told me we had a candidate. Where is she?" "Traffic, Mrs. Hayes." The lawyer stammered, his whiskers sweating. "The storm is flooding the lower avenues. Miss Kensington's driver says they're stuck on 4th. They won't make it before 2 a.m. "Then find someone else," Beatrix hissed, knuckles white on her cane. "If Amos does not have a proxy with power of attorney by the time that gavel falls, my brother-in-law will take the company, and he will pull the plug on my grandson by sunrise. I don't care if you have to marry him to a scullery maid. Find someone with a pulse and a signature." I unzipped my bright yellow raincoat, letting it fall open, and stepped forward. My wet boots squelched loudly on the expensive carpet. All 3 had snapped toward me, their ears swiveled. "Security is on the 1st floor," the younger associate barked, stepping in front of Beatrix, his tail bottle brushing. "You can't be up here." I ignored him. I kept my eyes locked on Beatrix. I could smell her perfume, something floral and obscenely expensive, layered over old fear. "Miss Kensington isn't going to make it," I said, low and level. "And even if she does, she's sleeping with your nephew. She's going to vote with the hostile faction the second she gets the ring on." The silence was absolute except for the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor from inside room 701. Finch went deathly pale. "Who are you? How do you know that?" "It doesn't matter who I am," I said. Beatrix was scrutinizing me, her dark eyes tracking the water dripping from my hair, my cheap denim, the absolute lack of fear in my posture. My ears were forward, steady. "What matters is it's 1:10 a.m. You need a wife for Amos, a legal wall between his life support and your brother-in-law." "You are eavesdropping," Beatrix said coldly. "I am applying for a job," I countered. "I have no ties to your family. I don't care about shipping lanes. I want a contract, a monthly stipend, full medical, and a buyout clause if he dies or if he wakes up and wants a divorce." "This is absurd," Finch sputtered. "Mrs. Hayes, she's a vagrant." "Shut up, Finch," Beatrix snapped, never breaking eye contact with me. She leaned closer. "You look like you crawled out of a storm drain, girl. What makes you think I would bind my grandson's legacy to a street rat? Because the street rat is standing right in front of you, and she isn't secretly working for the Tom trying to murder him," I said. My voice didn't waver. Desperation is the great equalizer. "Right now, you're poorer than I am." I held out my paw. "Steady, claws sheathed. I'll sign the prenup. Finch can notarize it here, and you can walk into that boardroom at 2 a.m. and shove the marriage certificate down your brother-in-law's throat. Or you can wait for a socialite who is currently canoodling with the enemy in the back of a stuck limousine. Your call." Beatrix stared at my outstretched paw. Then a slow, grim smile stretched across her wrinkled face. It didn't reach her eyes. "Finch," she said, "draft the standard proxy addendum. Put her name on it. But Mrs. Hayes dash. Do it or you're fired." She looked back at me. "What is your name, girl?" "Sophia," I said. A soft, cream-furred domestic short hair with big, tired green eyes. "Well, Sophia, let's go meet your husband." Room 701 didn't smell human. It smelled like sterilized plastic and cold. It was massive, dominated by machines. Towers of monitors flashing green and blue, for bags hanging like strange clear fruit. At the center lay Amos Hayes, I walked closer, my wet boots silent now. He didn't look like a billionaire tabloid prince. He looked like a ghost waiting for permission to cool. He was a huge, handsome charcoal tomcat, but his fur was dull, grayish, stretched taut over high cheekbones and a strong jaw that was slack and useless. His amber eyes were taped shut to keep them from drying out. A thick tube was shoved down his throat, taped aggressively to his muzzle. The ventilator hissed and clicked, forcing his chest to rise and fall. Hiss, click, rise, fall. His hospital gown slipped off one shoulder, revealing fur matted with bruises from constant needle sticks. His tail, usually so proud and fluffy, lay limp. 3 months ago, his yacht exploded, Beatrix said softly from the doorway, her sharp edge gone. Severe traumatic brain injury. He is suspended, not deteriorating, but not returning. I felt a bizarre kinship with him. In my past life, I had been the one trapped in a ruined body, staring at a ceiling. Finch scurried in, snapping his briefcase open. Miss Sophia, this stipulates you receive a stipend of $50,000 a month. Housing in a guest wing of the Hayes estate. 0 claim to the empire. In the event of Amos's passing, you receive $2 million and are quietly ushered out. If he wakes up, the marriage is annulled. Same payout. You are signing over all proxy voting rights to Mrs. Beatrix Hayes. He shoved a heavy pen toward me. I didn't hesitate. I didn't read the fine print. 50 grand meant never picking up a ringing phone in a damp apartment ever again. I signed. The ink bled into thick cream paper. I'm a licensed notary, Finch mumbled. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. God help us all. He stamped the papers. Thud. The ring, Beatrix demanded. Her associate handed her a small velvet box. She passed it to me. Put it on him. The board will want photographic proof. Inside rested a thick platinum band. I stepped up to the bed rail and gently took Amos's left paw. A jolt went up my arm. His paw was freezing, the pads dry, papery, but his claws were perfectly manicured. Limp, heavy like lead. I slid the ring over his knuckle. Slightly too big because he'd lost so much weight, but it caught. I didn't let go immediately. Finch snapped a photo. Flash. It's done, Beatrix said, tapping her cane. Finch, file it. Let's go bury my brother-in-law. They swept out, leaving me alone in the dim light of the monitors. I looked down at Amos. In the timeline I knew, he died because the woman they hired betrayed him. Now I was holding the contract. I wasn't going to betray him. Not because I was a good person, but because $2 million and a quiet life sounded like heaven. I leaned close to his tufted ear, smelling faint medical soap on his fur. I don't love you, I whispered to the unhearing Tom. And you don't know me, but I'm going to keep you alive, Amos, and you're going to keep me safe. Fair trade. I let his paw rest, gently on the white blanket, and walked out, the hiss of the ventilator behind me, into my new life.